It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Today we're going to jump on that gigantic, sharp, interactive board. We're going to go through Ricoh's FY2023. I'm asking a question right off the bat. Has Ricoh fallen out of position to lead a disrupted industry? As I see this gentleman leaning back in the chair, dreaming of profits. That's how I see Ricoh. Leaning back in the chair, dreaming of profits. I suggest Ricoh wake up from the dream, get up out of that chair, and figure out how to actually produce operating profit. Ricoh is above the line. They did beat Konicka's operating profit. They beat them by a little over 0.5% as a percent of revenue. Konica Minolta had 2% operating profit, and our friends over at Ricoh had 2.6% operating profit. When I look at Ricoh and I look at their selling and general administrative expenses, ladies and gentlemen, I see a lot of similarities with that of Konica Minolta. I've been screaming at my OEM friends for quite a while. Don't go into the market and sell stuff you don't make. You're manufacturers. Go into the market, make stuff, and sell the stuff you make. Both Ricoh and Konica Minolta trying to go into the market and do this stuff on things they don't make has been a disastrous roadmap. Ricoh, your numbers don't prove that your ambitions, that your goals to be this digital services company, to go out there and provide services to customers, is going to work. Because your numbers are looking pretty horrible around operating profit. And quite honestly, your numbers are a little bit disturbing in the way that you account for things. And so without any further ado, I want to jump on this gigantic, sharp, interactive board, and I'm going to share what I put together for everybody. First thing we'll talk about is their revenue. They posted for FY 2023 top line revenue of $15.2 billion. With an operating profit of $401.9 million, which is 2.6%. If you look at their selling, general, and administrative expenses at Ricoh, it's 32.3% of their revenue. At Konica Minolta, it's 42% of their revenue. I wanted to put Kyocera in the middle because that's how you should be. Where are they at? Well, they're at 23%. 23% Kyocera. So why in the hell is Ricoh and Konica Minolta have such a high percentage of selling and general administrative expenses? I'll tell you why. Because they're trying to do things they shouldn't be doing. They're going into the market, in Ricoh's case, trying to be this digital services company. That means you got to hire the right people. Those right people cost a whole lot more than people that sell and supply and service print equipment. And your human capital costs are going through the roof. And now you're running around into the marketplace selling these services based on a commodity, the same way you sold print. And I'm saying that because you're not making enough money in what you're selling. You're chasing revenue at all costs in services, just like our friends at Konica Minolta are doing. Let's just chase the revenue at all costs and hope the hell it all works out. In Konica Minolta's case, it hasn't worked out for 5 years. They just finally made an operating profit and they're just barely above the line. In Ricoh's case, you've struggled to get over 4% operating profit for a long damn time. And quite honestly, your aspirations are so damn low. You're forecasting for your FY 2024, you want a 2.8% operating profit. It's like, why don't you set the goal as so damn low that you can achieve it? And then you're going to have a party and a home run? Ladies and gentlemen, our industry is going through some major disruptions. And these organizations that just cannot produce operating profit, when they run into an obstacle, it's going to be deadly. And I am really, really concerned for our friends over there at Ricoh. I want to share some thoughts with you. Look at this chart. This chart shows all their divisions, the revenue from those divisions. And I'm adding up all this revenue and I'm thinking, what the hell's going on here? And then I see something that makes me say, WTF, and I said the actual words pretty loud. Let me explain. Ladies and gentlemen, they got Ricoh Digital Services revenue of $12 billion. They got Ricoh Digital Products revenue of $3.1 billion. They got Ricoh Graphics at $1.7 billion. They got Industrial Solutions at $733.5 million. And they have Other at $294 million. And I add up all those numbers and I come up with $17.8 billion. Thankfully, I found this chart. Because what did they do? Well, they eliminated $2.6 billion in sales. I'm just like, what the hell is this? You eliminated $2.6 billion in revenue. Where did that $2.6 billion come from? Did it come from the digital services? Did it come from the digital products? Did it come from graphics? Where the hell did it come from? That's 15% of the total revenue is eliminated. The revenue top line is $17.8 billion. They're showing it at 15.2. Where the hell did this go? Where did it come from? Ladies and gentlemen, this is interesting to me. I mean, I did this whole presentation. I spent hours on it. I took all these different business units, broke it all out. I'm going to share it with you. And then I add it all up, and I'm like, what the hell? I'm coming up with $17.8 billion. And then I find this in the presentation where they wiped out $2.6 billion in sales. It's just crazy. I wanted to show this chart because this is quarter by quarter, their operating profit. Ladies and gentlemen, the quarter by quarter, you can see these. Ricoh just can't do. I mean, they had one quarter where they had a 6.5% operating profit. I talked about this before. It was a fluke because the next quarter went down to less than 2%. They ended up this year at that 2.6%. So what's their problem? Why is nobody getting yelled at Ricoh? Why are they setting goals for the whole year for next year at 2.8% operating profit? It's like they're not even trying. They're not even trying is what it looks like. I wanted to share these, but to go through each one of these little divisions a little bit and share some thoughts with you. So Ricoh Digital Products, that's where they make the equipment. You know, they're going to form this Etra Company Ltd. That's the joint venture with Toshiba Tech and Ricoh. That's supposed to take effect July 1 of 2024. But that group did $3.1 billion in revenue, and they had $112 million operating profit. But the operating profit declined by 50% year on year. What the hell's going on in their manufacturing that made them operating profit decline by 50%? How is this going to change when they form that joint venture with Toshiba Tech? Is this revenue going to go to Etra and be eliminated from the Ricoh revenue number? It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. By the way, that $3.1 billion represents 20% of the total revenues. The total revenues of $15.2 billion. It's 20% of the revenue. Let's look at this. Industrial Solutions. Folks, there's two divisions, Industrial Solutions and Other, that I believe Ricoh should just immediately close down. They'd be better off for it. Let me share some thoughts on that. So this Ricoh Industrial Solutions produced $733.5 million in top-line revenue for FY2023. It was 4.8% of Ricoh's total $15.2 billion revenue. They had a negative $2 million operating profit. But I've been kind of complaining about this Industrial Solutions business with Ricoh for a while now. And I wanted to go back to the year 2020 through the year 2023. That group did a total of $3 billion in revenue, and it produced a whopping $17.4 million operating profit. I mean, what the hell? Why are you even doing it? Ricoh, 2020 to 23. You did $3 billion in revenue, and you made $17.4 million. What is so important about this? What is so important about it? Let's look at this other group. This other group's not much better. $295 million, 2% of Ricoh's $15.2 million. They lost $68 million. So I wanted to look at the other from 2020 to 2023. They did $1 billion in revenue, and they lost $317 million. Ricoh, you got $3 billion and $1 billion, $4 billion worth of revenue from 2020 to 2023 that literally made you no money and lost you money. If you got rid of those two divisions, I think you would do pretty well. I mean, no more confusion. You don't have to have the executive from the other when he stands up. How's other doing? Well, we lost a bunch of money again. I mean, you can eliminate those conversations. I think the costs that you would be able to capture back would be tremendous. You got to decide. Ricoh's got to decide what the hell they're going to focus on. Do they really want to be a services company to the end user? What do they really want to do? Because doing a whole bunch of crap and losing money and eliminating billions of dollars worth of revenue on the fine, I mean, this whole thing is just crazy to me. Let's look at the Ricoh Graphics Communication. It's 11% of Ricoh's total $15.2 billion revenue. It's a $1.7 billion for the year. The industrial business, the industrial printing, $256.2 million. I want to do a comparison to Konica Minolta because they're pretty much the same. Konica Minolta's industrial business with $241.6 million. And keep in mind, you know, when I put these slides together, that yen just changes like every 10 minutes. So sometimes these numbers, I mean, it gets crazy. But they're pretty much equal. Konica Minolta and Ricoh in the industrial print space. I like to compare them to Brother. I'll do it again. Brother at $650.2 million for the FY2023 for their Domino business group, which is their industrial print. Ricoh, why are you in industrial print? Seriously, why are you in it? You know, if you look at their commercial printing, $1.4 billion, you know, the light production stuff, the stuff that they could easily go into the market with and sell, right? They've been doing it forever. $1.4 billion. If you look at that total business combined, it's $1.7 billion. If you look at the professional print business over at Konica Minolta, it's $1.7 billion. Of course, Konica Minolta has that crazy marketing business for $367.5 billion that I think they're just going to get rid of. But at the end of the day, why is Ricoh and why is Konica in the industrial print space? Ricoh, if you want to be a digital services company, focus on being a digital services company. This industrial printing space, by the way, it had a 20% increase in revenue from 2022 to 2023. And down here it says industrial printing. Inkjet heads increased revenues by more than 20% on a particularly strong demand growth in China. So it wasn't even about selling the machines. It was about selling some inkjet heads. Ladies and gentlemen, Ricoh, my friends at Ricoh, I think it's time you all had a meeting and decide what in the hell do you really want to do into the marketplace. You can't keep doing what you're doing. This is the digital services group. Total revenue for digital services was $12 billion for the FY 2023. In the digital services group, they got office printing, they got office services. The office services thing they have, folks, they do a better job breaking that out than Konica ever does. Because Konica, you don't know what the hell they're doing in their IT services business. But in Ricoh, they really try to break it out in buckets. I'm going to share that with you in a second. So I do appreciate that, Ricoh. But folks, there's some issues with this. They did a total of $12 billion in revenue between office printing and office services. Their operating profit, they lump all that together. They don't break it apart. Well, it's only 2.2% operating profit. It's $264.8 million. They got a 2.2% operating profit between the office printing and the office services. And I believe they have too much a la carte in the IT deliverable. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. But they're showing they have reoccurring sales of $2.2 billion. Well, the reoccurring sales, what the hell exactly are they talking about? Because they just mix crap up. You know, that office printing should be all by itself. This shouldn't even be on this chart with the office services. Office services should be here. Here's the revenue we did. Here's all the breakouts, and here's the operating profit. Office printing is over here. As long as Ricoh and everybody else keeps meshing all these numbers together, they're going to allow poor management to exist. Because they're going to hide the poor management by burying all their poor decisions in a lumped number. And folks, at the end of the day, how in the hell can anybody wake up in the morning and be excited about a 2.2% operating profit? $12 billion, we bring in $264.8 million in operating profit. We're going to be a services company. This is scary to me. Real scary. This is the slide where they break it all out. And folks, what I did is I took the IT infrastructure, IT services, application services, communication services, business process services. And Ricoh does do a good job. They break it all out. They break it out by geographies, Japan, Europe, and Americas. I took it as a total. But look at these numbers. IT infrastructure, $1.9 billion for FY 2023. IT services, $1.2 billion. Application services, $1 billion. Communication services, $462.4 million. Business process services, $840 million. They even share with you exactly what those things are. But when I hear Ricoh talking about being a digital services company, folks, they're out there schlepping hardware like there's no tomorrow. They're out there schlepping PCs and monitors and all kinds of stuff to end users. But what are those real services they're delivering? What is that real reoccurring revenue they're delivering? If you look at the application services, $1 billion of revenue, that's a global number. In that is the DocuWare. And ladies and gentlemen, I did some research on DocuWare. I'm going to predict here today that DocuWare is not more than $120 million total dollars per year. And I'll tell you how I got that number. But that's, what, around 10% of the total application services globally. And then they take these numbers, and if you break them down by geographies, well, America's is 1.1 billion. 1.1 billion in office services. That's it. Europe is 1.7 billion in office services, and Japan is 2.7 billion. 49% of the revenue for office services coming out of the homeland, Japan. America's is the lowest at 20%. If you think about DocuWare, because that's something everybody here in America understands and knows, well, the applications business at 20% is only 144.1 million in the United States. And how much of that is DocuWare? I read an article where DocuWare was saying that the U.S. provided about 40%, 45% of their total revenue. At 40%, ladies and gentlemen, what? DocuWare's not that big. But here in the United States, every time Ricoh has a meeting, they stand on stage and they talk about DocuWare. It's going to save the industry. Oh, I got to get on DocuWare. DocuWare is like a lemonade stand out in front of Ricoh's headquarters. Seriously. It's a $120 million company, and it's a $15.2 billion in revenue company. Ricoh's got to do a better job explaining to their dealer partners, to the world in general, what the hell do they mean by digital services, and how are they going to monetize this? They make it so damn confusing that most people will never take the time to do what I just did. And at the end of the day, me explaining it to you is pretty damn confusing. That's why I urge all of my friends, whether you're a dealer, whether you're another OEM, is to read the damn financials these OEMs put on their website. Dig through this crap. Spend some hours with it. Your analysts in the industry are never going to do this. They don't have time to do that. And they might find something they have to question, and they're not going to do that. That's for sure. But it's up to you as an industry to pay attention to this crap. Because then when you go to these meetings and your leaders are up there talking to you, you could raise your hand and say, well, you talk about a 400% growth in this area or this area. Could you tell us what the starting number was? I'm so sick of going to meetings and listening to leaders stand on stage and talk about growth and percentages without we don't even know where the hell they started at. We got to do better as an industry. We got to have more analytics. We got to share more details because adjectives without math are usually proved pure bullshit. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do a whole episode on the IT services and the services business for Ricoh because they do give you some pretty good numbers here. But at the end of the day, you saw where we were with that, right? It's not that big of a business. It's $5.5 billion. It's $5.5 billion a year globally. 49% of the numbers coming from Japan at $2.7 billion. In Americas, it's only $1.1 billion. Folks, Ricoh's got to make some serious changes. DocuWare, how I came up with a $120 million number. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there was an article that was written, the 2019 global results. They gave the number, it was 59.5 million. That's at today's Forex, the euro number they gave in 2019. But folks, in 2022, they said they had a 21.5% increase. Of course, in this article where they talk about the increase, well, Ricoh had already bought them, so they just could say, we had a 21% increase, and no one knows where the hell the number started. So I wanted to do some assumptions. And I gave DocuWare the benefit of the doubt. Let's say you got a 20% increase every year since 2019, 5 years, you double your revenue, you're at $120 million. And I don't believe you had a 20% increase every single year. But at the end of the day, when I think about Ricoh and I think about what they talk about in the marketplace and I think about the excitement around DocuWare, I don't get it. It's like the smallest thing Ricoh does. They just bought a little AI company. They're going to piggyback in there with DocuWare. But ladies and gentlemen, here's the slide. I've shared this before. All the crap they bought. I'm saying crap. I mean, they ran around Europe and they just bought all kinds of companies. Look at all this stuff. So they're buying the revenue. They're chasing revenue at all costs. Wouldn't it be nice if they could do a presentation and they could show every single one of these companies? They could tell you what the starting revenue was and what the revenue is today. Wouldn't that be nice? And then the world would think, oh, maybe we should run around and buy up companies. Folks, I think if they did that, the whole world would say, oh, crap, don't run around and buy up companies. Folks, what's the real growth story for DocuWare? What's the real story? There has to be some changes in accountability in our industry, or we're never going to be able to navigate in the direction we need to be navigating. I found this slide in there. This is where they talk about they want to be this digital services company. In 2023, they ended up with 36%, $5.5 billion digital services, on the $15.2 billion in revenue. Folks, I don't know what to tell you. I think they count a whole lot of crap, and they, that elimination of over $2 billion in sales is just mind-boggling to me. And over here, when you read what they say, I blew it up because this is so absurd. I wanted to really make a point here. Uphold discontinuous growth and strategic investments and establish corporate venture capital unit. Establish corporate venture capital unit. Ricoh wants to start a venture capital unit, a company that can't even make operating profit of any kind of respected number, is now they want to be a venture capitalist firm? What in the hell are you doing, Ricoh? You need to buckle down and focus on what you can do well. You need to be able to explain to the marketplace what you're doing and how well you're doing it. You need to be able to share the numbers with rifle focus, the operating profit with rifle focus, and make the world feel good about you being a digital services company. Because right now, the way I see it, you're a wannabe digital services company. You're saddled with the weight of selling a commodity product for decades, and you want to now transition into this digital services company, and quite honestly, I don't know how you're going to do it, because your numbers aren't reflecting your sincerity about trying to do it. It looks to me like you're delivering services the same way you deliver copy machines and toners, and we all know that is definitely a commodity business. Folks, that's it. But Ricoh, I'll do another episode. I want to dig into this IT services and all these applications and really get rifle focused on that. And I believe that, Ricoh, you should try to get as rifle focused on your financials as I am. And then maybe we'd see some improvement in the operating profit, because everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you.